Okay, this is chapter 13. And what I want you to do to make this a little bit more interactive, a relatively short chapter, I want you to go ahead and take your book and follow along with me within your textbook. Okay, so what are some of the learning objectives? At the completion of study, I want you to be able to understand the goals of the inventory management, understand the use of the wholesalers and a formulary, become familiar with the inventory system for maintaining adequate inventory, be knowledgeable of the technology used in the inventory system, know the ordering and receiving process relating to the inventory management, be familiar with the form used during inventory and ordering, and understand the procedures for stocking and storing pharmacy inventory. Okay, so let's go ahead on page 351, and this is from the fifth edition, and thinking it through. So you are a pharmacy technician who have been assigned buyer's duties for the day. This means you are responsible for stocking and ordering drugs. You start your shift with boxes and totes full of drugs from an order that was placed with a wholesaler the night before. As you read this chapter, consider the following. You are stocking the order that was placed yesterday when you discover that several medications listed on the invoice are not in the tote boxes, and that some items included in the shipment were not ordered. What is the process for checking in the order and dealing with the wrong stock? Number two, what should be reviewed during the process of sharing the shelves? And number three, how would you determine if the correct amount of stock is on hand if additional stock should be ordered? What process would you put in place in it, and excuse me, what process would you use to place an order for additional stock? Okay, so we're going to come back to this at the end of lecture 13 and try to see if we can answer those particular questions. So, what is the chapter outline? One, we're going to look at inventory management, the inventory environment. We are going to look at inventory systems. I'm talking about inventory concepts, tools for perpetual inventory. We're going to look at the computer and inventory, key computer considerations, automated dispensing systems. We're going to look at ordering, forms, stocking, and storing. And our review will be going back to thinking it through just to see if we have understood the underlying concepts of inventory management. Okay, so let's talk about inventory management. Again, we're following on page 352, and we will talk about in relationship to the pharmacy. So when we talk about an inventory, this is a listing of goods or items that the business will use in its normal operations. Also be aware that because medication needs are often urgent, pharmacies must maintain a good control of their stock of or inventory. Inventory management, therefore, is a very integral and important part of the technician's job responsibility. Okay, so those are some of the things that you should be familiar with. Within the pharmacy, you have what is called open and closed formularies. So in detail, here, many hospitals, HMOs, insurers, and other healthcare systems maintain a list of medication called a formulary. These are the medications that are approved for use within that particular system. Some are called open formularies, and these are one that allow for the purchase of any medication that is prescribed. And then you have others that are closed formularies. It's a limited amount of approved medication that is used within that particular system. So, in order for a physician to obtain a medication that's not within that list, the formulary list, a physician must receive permission to use a medication that is not part of the list that's found within formulary. Another very important concept in relationship to inventory management is what is called therapeutic equivalence. In some hospital, a drug on a formulary that is therapeutic equivalent, that means that may have a chemically different but has similar actions or effects, may be sometimes substituted for a drug that's not on the formulary. Okay, and so within any system, whether it's open or closed, the formulary medications are routinely reviewed with new information that's available about the side effects or the contraindications associated with that particular medications. So there's certain definitions that you should be familiar with. One, closed formulary, which is a limited list of approved medication to be used within the system. Formulary, which is a list of medications approved for use. Inventory, a list of goods or items a business uses in its no operation. Open formulary, a system that allows a pharmacy to use any prescribed medication. And then the concept of therapeutic equivalent. This is where a pharmaceutical equivalents that produce the same effect in a patient can be used, even though it may be slightly chemically different. All of this is in the context of government regulation. It's very important that a pharmacy be able to have a list or have record of the medications that they are taking in and the medications that they're giving out to patients. There's many different aspects associated with the inventory environment. They are, again, the pharmacy, wholesalers, drug manufacturers, and the government. So, in relationship to the government, we should note the following. The major role of the government plays in regulation controlled substances is very important. You have what's called the DEA, and we talked about that in relationship to the Drug Enforcement Administration, and that is part of the U.S. government. And this regulates the distribution, the storage, record keeping, and ordering requirements for controlled substances. So, as I mentioned before, there's an interconnection between the pharmacy and its inventory and government regulations. And the pharmacy ability to have drugs on its facility is under the regulation of the DEA in the United States. Drug manufacturers, of course, the drugs will come from the drug manufacturer and be sent to the pharmacy via a wholesaler in many cases. So drug manufacturers, when a drug are not available for wholesalers due to expense, storage requirements, and other reasons, they can be obtained directly from the manufacturers. Okay, and if this is the case, a purchasing account for the pharmacy must be set up with the manufacturers. But in many cases, most of the drugs that you see within the pharmacy are given first to wholesalers. So more than 3/4 of the pharmaceutical manufacturers' sales are directly to wholesalers, which resell their inventory to hospitals, pharmacies, and other pharmaceutical dispensers. Likewise, just as with pharmacies and drug manufacturers, the wholesalers are government licensed and regulated, and they can stock thousands of different types of drugs. Because they offer pharmacies a dependable one-stop shopping for most of their medication needs, using wholesalers greatly simplifies the drug purchasing process, saving time and effort and money. There are fewer purchase orders, invoices, and payments. So again, the inventory environment is an interplay of the pharmacy, government regulations, drug manufacturers, and wholesalers. Okay, there's still some other concepts that you should be familiar with, and this is associated with inventory systems. So, a pharmaceutical inventory system tracks inventory, forecasts needs, and generates record reorders to maintain adequate inventories. In order to maintain an adequate supply of medication, pharmacies use a perpetual inventory system. Okay, so one of the concepts that should be noted is something called turnover. So, what is turnover? The turnover rate is the number of days it takes to use the complete stock of an item. Okay, so some of the things that are looked at when you talk about turnover is the quality and spoilage issues, and then of course the financial consideration. And so if a supplier payments terms are 30 days net, the stock turnover averages less than 30 days. Sometimes you have different type of drugs. Some over the counter, not over the counter, but pain relievers that may be in prescription doses may move faster than the chemotherapeutic drug. For example, a general rule for fast movers, slow movers is that 20% of the stock will account for 80% of the orders to the prescriptions. To keep the inventory dollar low, pharmacies keep a 1 to 2 supply of fast moving drugs and a month supply of slower moving drugs. You never want to be out of a drug um, that you offer to the public because it may lead to health challenges. Someone comes in for hypertension medication prescription that needs to be started that day. You don't have it. Now the pharmacy is scrambling to find, where can we find this particular drug to keep for this particular patient. And then you may have what's called spoilage. And you try to avoid this as much as possible because remember that you have paid for the drug. The pharmacy has paid for the drug. And so the time of storage conditions may cause a chemical compound in the medication to break down, resulting in either a loss of potency or change function. Okay, so as the expiration date approaches, it may be already too late to dispense the medication since it must be used before the date passes. So, in many cases, medication carries expiration dates and storage requirements that must be honored. It is an important task of the pharmacy technician to constantly check all stock of for drugs that are going out of date. Okay, so that's something that's very important. So how do you go about doing that? Well, you have different type of tools that allows for what's called a perpetual inventory, such as point of sale (POS) system, order entry devices, reorder points, and automated reports. And in our next segment, we are going to take that into consideration. Thank you.